November 1st, 2022, 7-month-old Uriel Schock died alone and forgotten, trapped in a hot car. How did this happen? How did this tragedy happen? How did this 7-month-old baby girl come to be where she was? Her grandmother, the defendant, Tracey. To understand how all this happened, let's go back to that day, November 1st, 2022. Tracey that day, the defendant, went to a prayer meeting with some friends. Brenda Knight, Barbara Knight, Judy Terrell. They had a meeting. During that meeting, it was discussed that we should go to lunch. Let's go to Beef O'Brady's. Okay. The defendant didn't go there right away. You see, she has a daughter, Kayla Nix. Kayla Nix also has a daughter, Uriel Schock, also known as Uri. That day, Kayla had a hair appointment. And with any 7-month-old, she needed someone to babysit so she could go get that done. So she called her mother. Who else would you call, right? A good babysitter that you can leave her with. So that's what Kayla did. And it was agreed that the defendant would come to Kayla and her husband Drew Schock's business and pick up little Uri. And then take care of her for most of the day till the end of the day, around 5 o'clock after the business closed. And that would be that. So the defendant got in her vehicle. She leaves that prayer meeting. She drives to Kayla's business. She picks up 7-month-old little Uri. She gets a car seat, puts it in the back of her vehicle. She gets a diaper bag because she's going to be taking care of a 7-month-old. She needs all the supplies. She needs diapers, she needs wipes, she needs food, she needs extra clothing. So she gets all that, puts it in her vehicle. Brenda Knight, Gail, who's also she's known as, it can be confusing sometimes, but we heard her called Gail. She was with her at that time. And she saw her get all this stuff. They then proceeded to Beef O'Brady's. Now, this is around a little after the 12 o'clock hour or so. They get there. They eat lunch there. It's the defendant, Gail, Brenda, and Judy. They eat their lunch. The defendant, and Uri's there with the defendant. She's taking care of her. She's being attentive towards her. She brings the diaper bag in, sets it down, does everything that's expected of a good babysitter. Looks out for Uri that entire meal. Is attentive to her, holds her, bounces her on her knee, feeds her, takes a straw, puts it in the water, puts it in your little Uri's mouth. Everything a good babysitter should do. That's what she did. That's what you're going to see. Now, when did they leave? Well, you're going to hear from all the ladies that were with the defendant that day that Gail had a young grandson who was 5 years old. And she was pretty insistent to make sure they all knew, I got to go pick him up at 1:50. So they all know. We left probably around 1:40. Between 1:40 and 1:50 because Gail had to get there. She was insistent. They leave Beef. The defendant grabs Uri, grabs a diaper bag, goes to the car, opens the door, puts her in the back seat, puts her in the car seat, like a good babysitter should, closes the door, gets in the vehicle, drives straight home. About a 10-minute drive. She gets home. She parks her car by the house, gets out of the vehicle, closes the door, goes in the house. Never grabs Uri. Uri's still in the back seat, waiting, sleeping. Whatever it may be, she's back there. Grandma doesn't get her. She goes in the house, plays with her dog, practices piano. While she's playing with her dog, time passes. And Uri's suffering. While she's playing the piano, time's passing. And Uri's alone in that vehicle. She's also on her mind, what's her primary focus, is that she's got another grandchild that she's supposed to spend time with that day, and she's focused on that. She's messaging back and forth with the mom, Rebecca Tucker. She's focused on all these other things. And while she's focused on that, time passes, and Uri suffers. Hours go by. Hours. You're going to hear that Nix is there. That's Kayla's dad. And he's out there doing things that dads do, and nowadays moms do, but mowing the lawn, taking care of the property. And their property, they have a house proper, then they have a garage, more barn. It's a large structure towards the back, and that's where he is. And the defendant thinks, oh, I should bring him some tea. So she grabs for herself, for him, gets into the vehicle where little Uri has been this entire time. And now we're closer to the 5 o'clock hour. The entire time. And drives to the back of the property, next to that barn, or next to the barn/garage. And she's still there. And she's still not thinking about it. Suddenly, oh my God, she realizes it. Hours later, she remembers, oh, I have this 7-month-old that I'm responsible for that's completely dependent on me. She obviously lets Nay know. From there on out, it's a mad rush. He grabs her out of the vehicle, puts her on the ground, starts doing CPR. 911's called. By that time, sometime in this period when Uri's being taken from the vehicle, put on the ground, that's when Rebecca Tucker gets there with the grandson that the defendant was so focused on. She calls 911. And you can hear it in her voice, the desperation. And all she can think about, Rebecca Tucker, is, I need to get my son away from this. This isn't good. And you can hear her tell the 911 operator that, just like, my mother will call you, my mother will call you. And meanwhile, May is frantically trying to give CPR to this little 7-month-old. EMTs arrive to the scene, and they take over, and they do their best. They do what they can. But, unfortunately, they noticed it's too late. It's too late. They had to stop life-saving measures at the scene because they noticed she was already showing signs of rigor and lividity, and they'll explain what that is, but clear signs she ain't coming back. So they stopped. She was brought to the hospital anyway because the scene is so emotional. There are people there that are obviously upset. The defendant is upset. Her husband's upset. Everyone there is upset. This is an upsetting event for everyone involved. So it was best just to bring her to the hospital. And from there, after she was brought to the hospital, there's no treatment. She's already gone. They brought her to the morgue. They brought her to the medical examiner. Members of the jury, that's what we're looking at here. Those are the events. That's how we got here. Let's talk about a few things that you're going to see and hear from other than what I've already talked about. I said she was brought to the morgue. She was brought to the medical examiner's office. That's Dr. Variable, and she performed what's called an autopsy. And she, based on her examination, when she viewed it, Uri died of hyperthermia. I don't think you need to be a doctor to understand that. Hypothermia is freezing. Hyperthermia, basically she overheated to death. That's what you're going to hear. And all the things that I talked about that the defendant was doing, you're going to hear that from her own mouth. She gave a statement. You're going to see and hear it. You're going to see a few other pieces of evidence, photos, things of that nature. You're going to see the body cam footage of when the detective showed up. And you're going to hear again from the defendant at that time. Members of the jury, At the end of this case, we're going to do what's called closing arguments. And in our system, you are given instructions on the law at the end of the case because we want you to focus on the facts. And that's what I would ask you to do. I know during jury selection, there was some talk of it's not about the act, it's not about the result. I disagree. Members of the jury, we are here today and for the next few days, not to determine whether or not Tracey Nix is a good person. We want to focus on her actions, inactions, and the results of those actions. And if you do that, and you focus on those facts as we go through here today, you're going to come to several conclusions. You're going to come to the conclusion that this was a tragedy, that this was negligence. But when you hear the law, you're going to determine that negligence was a crime. And I'm going to ask you that you find her guilty of the crime of aggravated manslaughter of 7-month-old Uriel. Thank you.
Aggravated manslaughter is what the prosecutor is going for the death of baby Uri. I want to put something in perspective for you all. So, almost a year to the day is baby Uri's death from the date of her little brother's, or her older brother's death, I should say. So her older brother dies on December 22nd of 2021, drowning in a lake on grandma's watch, on grandma defendant's watch, okay? It's ruled accidental, and this can't come into the trial. The court has excluded this entirely because it would be so inflammatory and prejudicial for the jury to think one grandchild was killed, well, then another one would be killed. So the jury will have no knowledge of this, but we know this. And then as the prosecutor noted, you heard him, then on November of 2022, so almost a year later, not quite, little Uriel dies too. Can you imagine these parents losing 2 children? And both of these children were in the care of their grandmother when they died. Think about that as we head to break. We're going to hear the defense opening statements together live next. A Ponzi scheme and a deadly poisoning.
A former pharmacist already convicted in a federal fraud case.
Now stands trial for the murder of her husband.
The financial crime gives rise to murder.
Did Natalie Cochran kill to cover up other crimes?
We're not here to obtain convictions. We're here to obtain the truth.
Now a jury will decide her fate.
And Court TV will bring you every minute.
The Ponzi scheme murder trial. Live coverage begins this week, only on Court TV.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Julie Grant. We got a brand new trial starting off this morning in Florida. We're calling it the Forgetful grandmother trial. 67-year-old Tracey Nix accused of aggravated manslaughter for the death of her 7-month-old granddaughter, Uriel. They called the baby Uri. She reportedly left the child in the back seat of her SUV for multiple hours when temperatures reached up to 90 degrees back in November of 2022. Now, the jury doesn't know this, but she also was babysitting her grandson, Uriel's brother, about a year before this incident, and he drowned in a lake. Now, the jury can't know this. It is excluded from the trial. Let's go in now and hear the defense team's opening statement.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I intend to tell you our view of the case here, and first of all, tell you that you do focus on the actions of the defendant. Whether you hurt somebody's fingernail or whether you kill somebody, it's the actions of the defendant that the judge will tell you about in the jury instructions. No one's going to tell you this wasn't a horrible, horrible situation. What happened was a family tragedy. But again, it was a tragedy that does not amount to a crime under Florida law if you will listen to the evidence that is on or the jury instructions that he will read you at the end of this case. Facts are really simple. They're not really in dispute. I don't think you're going to hear the defense question too many witnesses about too many things. Again, it's not in dispute. I think the state will probably introduce, 3 videos, which we would introduce if they didn't, which will show you what I'm talking about, which will prove what I'm what I'm telling you, which will create a reasonable doubt in your mind. Tracey Nix is a loving mother, grandmother, retired school teacher of 39 years, principal for 17 years, good member of her church for 39 years, member of the choir, Sunday school teacher, and attends not prayer meeting, as they said, but Bible study once a week. They have a group. And you say, well, why am I bringing that up? That's because that's where Tracey Nix was headed that morning, was to Bible study with her group that meets every, I believe it's Tuesday morning. After she was leaving on the ready, she was either getting ready to go or had left, her daughter Kayla said, hey, can you keep the baby today? I've got a hair appointment. Tracey had had the child 4 days the week before. She normally kept the child at least 1 or 2 days a week for quite a period of time. Tracey, trying to do a favor for her daughter, agrees to keep this child so that her daughter can go to the hair appointment. Tracey attends this Bible study. She then goes, she picks the child up, Uri, we'll call her Uri, picks Uri up, goes to Beef O'Brady's with lunch with the ladies, some of the ladies she had had Bible study with. You can see, I think that state will introduce the video showing the attention that was given to Uri by Tracey Nix, how she was acting toward her, and you will see how much she loved and cared for this child. After Beef O'Brady's, Tracey took the child home. I think it's about an 11-minute drive. They were doing roofing at her house that day. She couldn't park in the garage. I think you'll hear her statement. She doesn't remember where she parked, but she parked under a tree because she couldn't park in the garage. So she was distracted by that. The dog was in the way. She was distracted by the dog. She got out. She forgot the child. She forgot the child in the car. There's no doubt about that. She went in the house. She spent some time. She was focused. She was supposed to take her grandson by another daughter out to go really Christmas shopping and then take him out to eat. She was concerned about that. She gets in the car. She drives out to the barn. She's talking to her husband, and she realizes what's happened. She forgot. There's no aggravating factors here that make this culpable negligence as opposed to simple negligence, forgetting something. We all do that. You will see her reaction. You will see how she feels when this happens. And completely devastated, completely. And I won't discuss it now because I think pictures and videos are worth thousands of words. I'll let you decide how she felt, how this amount occurred, what she did, what she said, and how she felt. So this offense position is this was negligence. It was simple negligence. It was an accident. Under Florida law, it does not amount to culpable negligence. If you will follow the jury instructions, in this case, read the instructions on culpable negligence. I think you'll be able to take them back in the jury room with you. You will see what I'm saying. As horrible as this tragedy is, it's not culpable negligence. Thank you.
All right.
All right, so what do you think of the defense opening statement this morning, acknowledging that this is a horrible tragedy, but taking issue with the charging, saying that the state can't prove the level of mens rea, if you will, the guilty mind aspect of this under the law, saying that it doesn't rise there, that it is negligent, but not to the point of the criminal negligence that has been alleged against Tracey Nix. This lady is a former principal, too. I feel like I'm still digesting this, kind of in disbelief. My friends, I've got to tell you, I've been talking to my colleagues as we've been watching this along, and it's hard to believe. It's almost like lightning striking the same place twice when you think about it. 2 grandchildren killed under this lady's watch. And this is someone who spent her career devoted to the care and the betterment and the education of children. Let's bring in our law enforcement analyst guest. Claudia King is watching along with us. Claudia, good morning to you. Tell us what you're thinking, please, as you're hearing the facts of the case outlined by the attorneys.
I mean, this is absolutely tragic, of course, and not only have they had 2 children lost, the mom had an accident on the way when the first child was lost. So, I mean, this family has just been plagued by tragedy. I do understand where the defense is coming from, because the culpable negligence is what the prosecution has to prove. And that basically means that in addition to just being negligent, there has to be a gross and flagrant negligence that was intentional. So I think the prosecution is going to have a little trouble proving that, especially since they can't mention the first child's death. But this is ridiculous, and I'm almost upset that this woman is even going to trial, because honestly, you know, she should feel terrible. She should pay for this mistake. It's absolutely unconscionable that this even happened, and for a second time, to this woman. I can't even believe she was allowed to watch the child in the first place.
Yeah, right, Claudia. You would think that maybe someone, I mean, and again, I'm not blaming the mother of these babies at all, so I want to be very clear. You would think maybe there'd be some reluctance, right? As you noted, maybe some after the first time. Who could blame her for being reluctant? And then also, it seems from what the prosecutor said that this mother was stuck, that Kayla Nix was just stuck. And so it was, she had a hair appointment, she needed someone, you know. I mean, obviously the grandmother loved these children and had displayed love, or she would have never been able to watch them in the first place.